Hello and welcome to the first lesson of this course. We are going to be working on long-windedness. And in my experience in professional settings, when people are overly talkative, it's one of the worst possible impressions they can make on other people in terms of their communication. So we have to get at this issue in order to eventually come across as clear, concise, and confident. This is really the root of the problem for a lot of people. So tip number one is that long-windedness is a key enemy of good communication. And if words like gabby, chatty, verbose, and talkative accurately describe you, if you've ever said this about yourself, or if people around you have ever described you this way, then that is not a good thing. Don't wear that like a badge of honor. We really have to get at long-windedness. We're going to look at a quote by Allison Green. She's a writer for U.S. News and World Report, and she was talking about job interviews. And one of the killers of job interviews that will get you not hired is being overly talkative in a job interview. Now, we're not talking generally about job interviews in this course, but it does show you how people think about you when you're too talkative. She writes this: you might think, well, some people are long-winded, but that doesn't mean he wouldn't do a good job. The problem with that is, at minimum, it signals that you're not good at picking up on conversational cues, and it raises doubts about your ability to organize your thoughts and convey needed information quickly. So when you're long-winded, it sends off a bunch of negative signals, and then other people are going to create the wrong impression about you. So it's very important to get to the bottom of this. So strategy number one, figure out why you are sometimes long-winded. You might not be overly talkative in every situation, but when you are, what are those situations that trigger that? What's going on in your mind that triggered you to talk too much? Are you anxious? There's a lot of reasons. Are you nervous? What's happening there? Because all of the great practical tips in the world are not going to solve the unspoken problem that is driving your long-windedness in the first place. You have to get to the root of the issue if you really want to make progress. So let's take an example of a physician, for example. His overly talkativeness is probably rooted in some unspoken beliefs. So this is very stereotypical of highly educated people. We get this big education and we want everybody to know how smart we are. And so the physician might be thinking that. Maybe it's unspoken though. He doesn't even realize he's thinking, I just want everybody to know I'm smart. And then as a result, he's talking way too much. Now what happens is the people around him don't say anything about it. They just listen politely. And they say, oh, yeah, really? Didn't know that. They just go along because we're generally polite people. But in their heads, they're making judgments about the person talking too much. So they never really say anything. They never say, hey, you know what? You need to wrap it up. Because we're professionals, we're trying to be polite. But they will nevertheless walk away with an impression about you, a negative conclusion that you do not want them to draw. So we're long-winded for various reasons, and I want to know what your reason is. Give that some serious thought. Here are some examples of reasons that I have come across over the years. One of them is insecurity. When people are insecure, they might get nervous and talk too much. Another one is self-centeredness. They just like to be the center of attention. They think everything is about them, and so they're going to talk because they want everybody to know that the world is about them. You might want other people to know everything that you know, like you want to show them how smart you are, like the physician. You might like the airtime and the attention. Maybe, for example, you have a little bit of a performer in you, and so you like it when people are paying attention to you, and so that's why you're too talkative. You might mistake talking for adding value. So you might think, well, if I'm talking, I'm contributing. But maybe what you're saying is not really contributing. You have to give that consideration as well. Another one is you might mistake more talking for good communication. Like I know some people who are really long-winded and they think, oh, I'm a good communicator because I can talk. Well, just being able to talk doesn't make you a good communicator any more than swinging a racket around makes you a good tennis player. You have to know how to do it, why to do it, when to do it. You might also have control issues. This is a big one. I've seen a lot of people want to talk. They want to be the one talking so they can essentially dominate the conversation. So if they're talking, they're in control of the situation. They don't have to listen. They don't have to go along with anything that anybody else says. So what are your issues? Look at this list. And maybe your reason for talking too much is not on here. But whatever it is, you have to get to the bottom of it. Take some time, reflect on this so that you can put all the other tips in this course into practice and get the most value out of it. Strategy number 2 is you have to gauge your long-windedness. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 is you're pretty concise. 5 is in the middle, and 10 is you're really talkative. What you want to do is figure out where you are. So where are you on that scale? And I know you might say, well, it depends on the situation. Well, when you are the most talkative, all those triggers are happening, where are you on a scale of 1 to 10? And then set a goal to be below 5. If there are a handful of people in the room, you want to be in the more concise half of that group in terms of how you're communicating. So set a goal as you go through this course and as you put these tips into practice to be below 5. Strategy number 3 is to commit to conciseness. You have to try this to see the effect. You have to say, you know what? I'm going to commit to being concise in conversations, in meetings, and in presentations. I'm going to make this a new value that I am committing to so that you can start working on this. As FDR said, be sincere, be brief, and be seated. Now, he was talking about presentations, public speaking, and that's certainly an application for what we're talking about in the course, but it really applies to conversations and to meetings in general. You want to commit to being concise ahead of time so that when you're in the moment, you're going to come out much more crisp. And I also want you to commit to practicing, of course, the tips in the next lessons and all the lessons the rest of the course. And remember why you're doing this in the first place. Why do you want to be more clear, concise, and confident? There are a lot of benefits to this. First, people will pay more attention to what you say. That's a huge benefit. People will remember what you say when you're more concise. What you say will have more impact, and ultimately, it'll help you lead more effectively. So concise communication is basically the hallmark of an effective leader. And if you really want what you say to have impact, you have to work on that. So to recap, long-windedness is the key enemy of good communication. As far as your takeaways, figure out why you are personally motivated underneath to be overly talkative. Get at that issue. Number 2, gauge your long-windedness. On a scale of 1 to 10, where are you? And then commit to being below 5. And then also commit to practicing the tips in the rest of the course. In the next lesson, we are going to look at how to form an overall concise message so that it'll land the right way. I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.